Now while you're watching this video, please remember to like, share this video, subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon for notification of future videos. Thank you. Hello there, welcome back to my channel guys. Yes, today I have yet again another exciting video for you. I must apologize because I had intended to put out this video from yesterday or in the morning, but tiredness actually got the better of me. But nevertheless, let's see what we can do here and what we can actually gather here from this study. Now, as you can see, the title suggests, was Noah given dietary laws according to SDAs and fellow Old Covenant believers? Romans 14 continued. Right? So, was Noah given dietary laws according to SDAs and fellow Old Covenant believers? Romans 14 and diet continued. Why I titled this Romans 14 and diet continued? It is because it is a continuation of the previous video, which is titled Romans 14 and diet in light of the Seventh-day Adventists and fellow Old Covenant believers versus Christians. In that video, I showed you where the Christians' interpretations of Romans 14 is actually correct, and the Seventh-day Adventist Church and fellow Old Covenant believers, their interpretation of Romans chapter 14 is incorrect. They have it to say that we Christians are not interpreting Romans 14 correctly, and it is not implying that the Old Covenant dietary laws are done away with. In that video, I showed you that they are very much wrong and that we are correct in our interpretation of Romans chapter 14. In this video, I'm going to show it in an even sharper manner that Christians' interpretation of Romans 14 is correct by using one of their very strong arguments, Noah. Right? They have it to say that Noah was given dietary laws, right? And this dietary laws was from before the giving of the law that was given through Moses, right? It was from before, it predates Moses. So as a result of that, there's no way that law could have been done away with because it predates Moses. This is what they're basically saying. I am going to look at Noah and this alleged dietary laws of theirs, and I'm going to show you that quite the contrary is actually revealed in the scriptures. Right? So what we are going to do, we are going to look at Romans chapter, no, not Romans. We are going to look at Genesis chapter 1. No, Genesis chapter 7 should say, sorry. Genesis chapter 7. And it reads thus, And the Lord said unto Noah, Come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. Of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by the sevens, the male and his female. So you're going to take 7 pair of male and female of clean beasts. Now when it says clean here, it is talking ceremonially clean, right? And of beasts that are not clean by 2, right? Male and female, beasts that are not ceremonially clean. If you read this from, let me see, if you read these same verses from, if you read this verse, no, I was going to look at another translation, but I'm going to keep it at the KJV for now. Now, if you look at the Hebrew word for clean, right, it means, I'm going to find the word for you, the Hebrew word for clean. The Hebrew word for clean in Genesis 7, it actually means ceremonially, pure in a physical, chemical, ceremonial or moral sense, right? So it means that they are clean ceremonially, right? Definitely not morally, so it has to be ceremonially, right? And those beasts that are not clean, meaning that they are not ceremonially clean, right? This is what it actually means logically, right? Because there is nothing moral about food, right? The choice of food that you choose to eat. And I'm going to show this as we go to Genesis chapter 9, that when it says clean, it's talking ceremonially, right? I'm going to show that. But before I get to Genesis 9, so in Genesis chapter 7, they were told to take 7 pairs, right, of beasts that are clean into the ark, and 2 pairs of beasts that are not clean into the ark. I'm going to read from a commentary, J. Gill's, right? And you're going to see how what's J. Gill's take on Genesis chapter 7, right? So just give me a second, guys. Genesis chapter 7, J. Gill's. So this is what J. Gill has to say. From hence, it appears that the distinction of clean and unclean beasts, at least for sacrifice, if not for food. So from hence it appears that the distinction of clean and unclean beasts, at least for sacrifice, if not for food, was known before the flood. So notice what J. Gill is saying here, that this was known, the distinction of clean and unclean was known from before the flood, at least for sacrifice, if not for food. This is important to note. And so before the law of Moses, right, though something, this is said by anticipation, and as providing a large stock of such creatures for the propagation of their species, because they would be most serviceable to men, both for food and sacrifice. So this is what he's saying, a person's interpret this as an anticipation and as providing a large stock of such creatures for propagation of their species, because they would be serviceable to men for food and for sacrifice. But as it is certain that sacrifice is what was offered ever since the fall of man, by the same way, namely by divine revelation, that men were taught to sacrifice creatures as typical of the sacrifice of Christ. They were directed what sorts of creatures to offer, as were most suitable figures of him, that is Christ. Those beasts that were clean and used under the law, and so no doubt at this time, were oxen, sheep, and goats. And these were to be taken into the ark by sevens, or 7. And what did he say? For the purpose of sacrifice and to be serviceable for food. Right? So because God only sacrificed a certain species of animals, right? And those are the ones that were deemed clean. This is why they were told, right, to basically take more of those beasts. 1, to use for sacrifice, and 2, for the purpose of being for food, in anticipation of the future. Right? So this is what J. Gills is actually saying. I'm going to put the full quote in the comment section. I'll try to squeeze it on the screen as well. And J. Gills made a wonderful observation, right? That these were the reasons for God taking more of those beasts. Right? Now in Genesis chapter 9, verse 4, this is going to prove to you that when it's talking about clean, it's the Hebrew word for clean there, though it can mean ceremonially or in a moral sense, it has to be ceremonially speaking when it's talking about clean. And the reason for this is that in Genesis 9 verse 3, God says to Noah that every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, even as the green herb I have given you all things. Now if you go back, to Genesis chapter 1, right? And I think it's chapter 3 as well. Chapter 1, it shows you that they were given fruits. Adam was given fruits. And after sin, he was given vegetables, right? After sin, Adam was given vegetables to eat. And the scripture tell you, yes guys, so God said to Noah in Genesis 1, verse 28, 29, and God said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. So when God said in Genesis 9 here, that every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, even as the green herb I have given you all things. Right? God is saying that just as how with the green herb, you could eat every one of them, right, as you so desire. It is in the same way I have given you every living thing. Everything that liveth shall be meat for you, even as the green herb I have given you all things. So just as with the green herb he had all of them to eat, it is in the same way with living things, he had all of them that he could choose from to eat. There was no exception. And so when J. Gills talk about in Genesis 7, his commentary, by saying that the reason that they choose why God made them take more of the clean beasts was for sacrifice, and it was also for food for them later in anticipation, right? So this is the reason why J. Gills is talking about anticipation for the future to come. And the reason why J. Gills pointed out that, we are going to see in his commentary of Genesis. We are going to see his commentary in Genesis 9. Right? We are going to see J. Gills' commentary of Genesis 9. So here's what J. Gills has to say. That is, when God said every living thing shall be meat for you, that is, every beast, fowl, and fish, without exception. For though there was a difference at this time of clean and unclean creatures with respect to sacrifice, yet not with respect to food. Right? This is important to note, with sacrifice, at this time, there was a certain type of animals that they could offer. Bullock, goat, and so forth. They could offer pig and so forth for sacrifice. However, with food, this is why J. Gill says, yet not with respect to food. Because when it comes to the eating part, there was no exception to what they could eat. So he went on to say, every creature of God was good then, as it is now. In the new covenant he's talking about, as it is now. So every creature of God was good then, in Noah time, as it is now in the new covenant. And you find that in 1 Timothy 4, when it says, for every creature or everything that God created is good, and it is to be received with thanksgiving by them that know the truth. When Paul wrote that, it is coming all the way back from Genesis 9, that everything was essentially good for food from those days. So J. Gills continues on this point and said that every creature of God was good then, as it is now, and it was left to man's reason and judgment what to make use of, as would be most conducive to his health and agreeable to his taste. And though there was a distinction afterwards made under the Levitical dispensation among the Jews who were forbid the use of some creatures, right? Yet they themselves and he's quoting from something called Bereshit Rabbah. So it says that they themselves in F11 Bereshit Rabbah, Apud, Ainsworth in Locke, that's what he's quoting from, that all unclean beasts will be clean in the world to come. So the Jews themselves here, is basically, he's saying that they themselves say that all unclean beasts will be clean in the world to come, in the times of the Messiah, as they were to the sons of Noah, and refer to this text in proof of it. So the Jews held Genesis 9, as a proof that in the time of Messiah, right, they are going to all foods is going to be made clean again. This is what J. Gills is saying, that this was what the Jews held to, right? That in the world to come in the times of Messiah, as they were to the sons of Noah, and refer to this text in proof of it. That is Genesis 9 verse 3. The only exception in this text is that they must be living creatures which are taken and used for food, not such as die of themselves or are torn to pieces by wild beasts. And there are some scripture passages in the the old covenant, right? That basically says is that you must not eat anything that die of itself, right, or are torn by wild beasts. You would have seen me posted those on the screen. But such as are taken alive and killed in a proper manner. Killed, and you have the blood spilled out and so forth, because the blood, is life. You find that in Genesis 9 verse 4, you cannot eat the blood. When they are torn by beasts and they die of itself, then everything in the beast become contaminated before you can actually eat it, right? So, and which wouldn't be healthy, right? So as a result of that, they were forbidden to eat anything torn by beasts or that die of itself. So this was the only exception, right? James continued to say, even as the green herb I have given you all things. So James is saying, as every green herb was given for meat to Adam originally without any exception, quoting Genesis 1 verse 29, so every living creature without exception was given to Noah and his sons for food. This is clear. It can't get any clearer than this. Now, every translation that you read from, it will read the same, that God said in Genesis 9 verse 3, every living creature shall be food for you. It doesn't matter which translation that they look to. And if they look to their precious KJV, right? You know most of them are KJV only is. Their own KJV says the same thing. So Noah was not under any dietary restriction, despite what Seventh-day Adventists have to say, right? That, oh, Noah, this dietary restrictions, it was from the days of Noah, and so it precedes the law of Moses. Therefore, there is no way Paul could be doing away with the dietary laws, because the dietary laws exist from Noah's days. We are finding that there is no such thing, that Seventh-day Adventists are basically lying where this is concerned. And so when Paul says that in Romans, when Paul says in Romans 14, I'm going to read from Romans 14 again for you guys. When Paul says in Romans 14, verse 14, that, reading from their precious KJV, I know and am persuaded by the Lord Jesus that there is nothing unclean of itself, but to him that estimate anything to be unclean, to him it is unclean. So Paul was correct, that there is nothing unclean of itself, because he realized, Paul, I remember I pointed it out, in my previous video, that Paul is basically using the scriptures to build his doctrine. He made this clear in Romans 15, when verse 4 specifically, when he made reference to the scriptures by saying that these things, for whatsoever were written aforetime, were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope. And Romans 15 is a continuation of Romans 14. For notice, Romans 14 verse 1 and Romans 15 verse 1 is talking about weak brethren, persons who are weak. So it's the same subject. So when he says verse 4, when he talk about the scriptures, that we might have hope by the scriptures, those things were written for our learning. He was building his doctrine on Romans 14 by using the scriptures, which in his day, the scriptures was the very Old Testament, because the New Testament was not compiled as yet. So Paul was using the Old Testament to build his doctrine on Romans 14. So Paul would be well aware of Genesis 9, when at that time, Noah and his seed after him, they could eat any beast they feel like. There were no restrictions to what they could eat. So Paul was correct when he says that there is nothing unclean of itself. Because when it says unclean of itself, it means that nothing is naturally unclean. God is the one who made them unclean, ceremonially unclean. And that was made during the time of Moses. It was made unclean in the time of Moses, because God says in Genesis 1 that all his work is good. Each day he would often end by saying, and God saw that it was good. So nothing that God do is good, and no creature that God made is bad, because God did say he saw that it's good, and God saw that it was good. right? So that is why in 1 Timothy 4, right, it says that for every creature of God is good. Every created thing, everything that God created is good in 1 Timothy 4, right? So Paul here is quoting again from Genesis 1 when God said, God saw that all things was good. So Paul is communicating the point that no creature is bad. None of them is bad. They weren't naturally unclean. If they were naturally unclean, there is no way God would have told Noah that he could eat anything. It is a time. So the fact that persons were eating beasts of every kind and there were no restriction, it goes to show that it is not food, is not a moral. The type of food that you eat, the type of flesh or beast that you eat, there is nothing moral about it. It is a ritual law. If it wasn't a ritual law, God wouldn't have allowed Adam, or Noah should say, to eat, give him permission to eat anyone he wants to eat, because it's not moral. It is something ritual. It's a ceremonial law. Right? It is a ceremonial law, and that is why in Leviticus 11 verse 4, God says that it is unclean unto you, Israel. To you it is unclean. But notice in Genesis 9, when God gave the covenant of the rainbow, he said to Noah that this covenant that I made with you, it is for you and your seed after you and every living creature that is upon the earth. It is between me and you and all the earth. So the covenant was not limited to Noah alone. If Seventh-day Adventists say that when God said it is unclean unto you, Israel, it never really mean that, then they have to say that when God said the covenant, it is between him, Noah, and all the earth, God didn't mean that either. You can't take one and leave the rest. And if God did mean that the covenant was between him and all the earth, right, then God must also mean in Leviticus 11 verse 4 that it is unclean unto Israel. Unto you, he said. He never said unto you and all the earth. Bingo. That goes to show that nothing, Paul was correct when he said that nothing is unclean of itself. They were naturally unclean. They are ceremonially unclean to Israel. And so in Romans 14 verse 20, when it says that all things indeed are pure, right? Yeah. Romans, yeah. So it says, for me, destroy not the work of God. All things indeed are pure, are clean. Other translation says clean. But it is evil for that man who eat it with offense. And I showed in the previous video that clean, pure actually means clean. The Greek word for pure means clean. Right? So all things indeed are clean. Right? All things. Nothing was naturally unclean of itself. As what Paul says in verse 14. Nothing is unclean of itself. It's God made certain things unclean in the law and through the law of Moses, which are rituals. And because by virtue of the cross, all rituals have been done away with. Every single ritual there is has been done away with by virtue of the cross. Because these rituals, they are all pointing to the cross of Calvary. Each of them is communicating a truth that would be realized through Calvary's cross. So once Calvary cross, once Jesus would have made his atonement, on the cross, there is no need for any rituals anymore, because they would have all served their purpose. You understand? And so this is why Paul wrote what he wrote in Romans 14, because the book of Romans, it was written to both Jews and Gentiles. Right? It was written to both the Jews and Gentiles. And Gentiles, they have no need. They were forbidden to keep the law of Moses. You see that in Acts 15. And I have a study on Acts 15 as well. Right? I'll put it in the comment section, where they were telling them that they must circumcise and keep the law of Moses. Right? In order for a Gentile Christian to keep the law of Moses, they first had to circumcise. Right? So even for us Christians, if we want to keep dietary laws, we have to get circumcised first. Right? You can't keep dietary laws without getting circumcised. And once circumcision was done away with, all the law itself would naturally be done away with. right, all the law would naturally be done away with. And because the law of circumcision was done away with, there was no need for Gentile Christians to keep dietary laws. And so this is why Paul wrote what he wrote here, to tell them, hey, no need to follow these dietary restrictions. Right? There is absolutely no need for them. So this is what Paul is actually communicating here, right, in Romans 14, that whether you want to eat vegetables, it's all up to you. If you want to eat flesh and eat any flesh there is, it's all up to you, to each his own. They cannot add to your salvation, neither can they take away from your salvation. Those dietary laws had already served its purpose, and they are no more by virtue of the cross. Right? So I end this video. Right? I do hope that you enjoy it. If you did, you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. And stay tuned. Right? Because in the weekend to come, I am going to do 2 more studies. One, where I show you that this was even communicated. All what Paul is saying here in Romans 14. It was communicated by Jesus himself even after the cross. Right? I'm going to have a study where I show that. And I'm also going to show you that when the Bible talks about clean and unclean, I'm going to show you the real meaning of it. Right, guys? So with that being said, bye-bye now.